Welcome back. This is the 2022 Lexus LX 600, the big one, the flagship, the cool one, the Lexus Land Cruiser. Sadly, we don't get the Land Cruiser here in the United States, but I have some thoughts on that as well in just a minute. But I've spent the last week with it. I've put almost 500 miles on it. I've gotten really accommodated to what its strengths are, what some of maybe its weaknesses are, and just what to make of this huge behemoth of an SUV, a body-on-frame SUV. I'm not gonna focus so much on the technology. You can go watch other videos that's gonna discuss that. And if you're familiar with other modern Lexus products, you're probably gonna be pretty familiar with what's in here too. This one tops out at almost, or this one's priced out at almost $110,000. And so I wanna just speak to that. And I wanna speak to the driving experience as the driver, as a passenger, and even my kids, and what their experience was like in the LX. So let's go for a drive. I'll talk you through my thoughts. We'll go from there. So here it is, the new LX 600 from Lexus. And as you can see, that grille is just as big as it's ever been. I think at this point, it's a love it or hate it thing. Some people really like it, some people don't. And I'll leave that up to you. I do think in this F Sport trim that it looks pretty cool. And I think it looks better than the chic blade trim of like the ultra luxury version, for example. But you know, what's interesting is that this is slightly larger in nearly every way than the last LX. And yet, to my eye, it appears smaller somehow. And the proportions I think are pretty cool. I like the long hood. I like the lines. I think it looks pretty aggressive. And overall, I think it's a pretty sharp looking SUV. I think that they've done a great job at updating it. And if you compare this to the pictures of the new Land Cruiser, you can definitely see, you know, the carryover there. But for what it is, I think Lexus has done a pretty sweet job. Coming into the interior, you're treated with a bunch of nice leather. Pretty good seats, although I will say that they are definitely more narrow than what you're probably expecting. And I'll speak more to that in just a moment as well. But you have your F Sport in the headrest there. You've got your cool box, which gets your drinks really chilly. Your wireless charging pad, which I know on some of these LX trims is missing, like the Ultra Luxury. I don't know if it's an add-on option for that trim specifically, but it is here and it works pretty well. You got your nice doors with that red leather. It's a lot of red. It's pretty bold with that chrome and black, and it might be too much for some people, but the seats are nicely adjustable. Extra thigh support you can extend out. You have interesting gauges. The gauges on the left and on the right are analog. Then you have this small-ish screen for your digital cluster, and it looks good. I mean, you can change the drive modes: comfort, normal, sport, sharp, custom. I've been keeping it in comfort. You know, sport's fun and whatever, but this is really just meant for cruising, so it's been in comfort. Coming over to the center stack, you have this large, nice, beautiful screen. Again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the technology. I just want you to kind of see it, get a feel for it. It almost feels like an afterthought. It's kind of interesting how it just kind of like droops over the rest of the stack, almost like they had the design completed in the last minute. They were like, let's put a bigger screen. I don't know. So it kind of hangs over. And like with other Lexuses right now, you have the start-stop button like clear up on the screen, and then your volume knob is even higher. Kind of an interesting design choice. I'm used to it now, but like, of course, you know, when I first got in here, I was looking for the start-stop somewhere down here, but nope, it's up on the screen. You also have this screen that has a bunch of different, you know, modes. You've got your climate control, you've got your height control for the suspension, which is really cool. Lowers down, raises up, and then you have your different menu options here. Again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time here. It's not the point of this review, but it works well. I just don't know that it works better than just having traditional buttons. I think it's cool, but I'm not sure if it's better. You also thankfully do have a bunch of just regular buttons here still, and you have your crawl control and your, I don't know who's off-roading in these, but I want to see that, but that would be really cool. In fact, if they made like a stripped down version of this, that's like an off-road, like a TRD, the Lexus TRD version, that would be really cool. Bigger tires, all that stuff. You have this interesting cubby down there that isn't a wireless charging pad. That's actually right here. You have a cubby under there that can store some things, obviously, like your sunglasses case. Automatic with your climate concierge, by the way. It's basically automatic climate control. It does everything for you. But you have your automatic ventilated seats, which do a pretty good job of keeping you cool. Heated seats, heated steering wheel, always a welcome thing. Here's your buttons for your locking diff, traction control, raising up the suspension, the ground clearance and everything. So again, not going to spend a ton of time here, but that gives you an idea. Traditional shift lever that takes up a decent amount of space, but I don't mind it. I like the traditional lever rather than like a dial or something, but I do understand people's complaints that it does take up a decent amount of space there. So I don't know if you're really able to tell from the camera angle, but here is the passenger seat, and while it is very comfortable, it's actually pretty narrow up here. There's not a ton of knee and leg room, and even shoulder. There is some shoulder room, I'll give them that, because this is a very wide center console, but it doesn't feel all that more roomy than the Lexus NX that I had recently. So interesting, this is such a large car, and yet there's just not like a throne-like experience like you have in some of the other flagship luxury SUVs. So coming into the rear, it's a similar story. Again, this is a huge SUV, but also something interesting to note is that for 110 grand, you can't get not fixed, but automatic running boards. These are just, kind of plastic standard running boards. Kind of an interesting choice for the price, but coming into the rear here, the leather, I can't say it enough. It's such high quality. It feels so soft. And you do have a lot of leg room back here. You do have a decently sized hump here in the middle. So if you're sitting in the middle, your knees are going to come way up and your feet are going to be crunched right against that center console. And it's not very comfortable here in the middle at all. You have kind of like the back cushion for the armrest that digs into your back a little bit, like you can see right there. And so truly this is more of a four-seater, which is shocking considering how large this is. But yeah, my knees, I'm a 5'9", just regular sized guy, and you can see I don't have any room to move my feet at all, and that hump probably comes up 4-5 inches. So just something to be aware of. Now I do have a good amount of leg space here, but again, it's not probably as much as what you're expecting given the size of this SUV. You do have your nice controls back here, heated and ventilated rear seats, very cool. And that all works great. You have this cool rear access to the cool box, so that's also cool. And so with my kids in their car seats, which I've taken out, they do have enough space, but my wife and I are both 5'9", and they have enough space, but it's, again, just not quite as much as you might be thinking. Okay, so here's where things get interesting. The third row, there's 2 seats back there, but they are possibly the smallest seats I've ever seen. So to get back there, you just lift this lever, which is kind of a weird design, and the whole thing folds up. But then you kind of have to like crawl through back here, and then you have these 2 mini jump seats, which I know it's kind of like Land Cruiser tradition, but these don't even go on the side anymore. They do go underneath the floor, which is cool, but they are so small and they're like paper thin. And so, as you can see, my knees are bent way up. My butt is hardly on there and just not comfortable. So if I'm here to pull this back, and then you have to really, not easy. I mean, for kids, they'll struggle. And then to bring it back some more. Okay, so there it is with it reclined in a normal position. As you can hopefully see there, This is an emergency only kind of seat, especially for adults. You do have your folding, charging, cup holders, vents, you know, that stuff, that's great, but this is so awkward. And I'm just not the biggest fan. I don't see really the point of these. My kids had fun back here, but they're small. They're 6 and 3. Anything older than that, again, maybe best left for just emergencies only. And then to get out, once you folded those forward, again, you kind of have to just slide your bum and really just super awkwardly climb out of the back. There we go. I don't know, kind of just a weird design choice. And now I'll show you how they fold down, which is also kind of strange. You have some buttons for you where you can do that here. So maybe I'll show you that one. So you actually have to hold this. You can't just tap it. You have to hold it down the whole time. Holding the button still. There you go. Pretty cool. Now we'll go do it from the back. Okay. Here's the back. Those lights look so good. So I just folded down the right side here. Pardon the crumbs, my 3-year-old, obviously. Not mine, I promise. So again, you have to come over, press the button, and hold it down. Again, if you let go, it stops. I almost just wish I could have a pull strap. Oh. There we go. That was weird. Headrest didn't... Oh, now I've done it. Okay, trying this again. Folding it down. I just wish there was a quick release strap like in our Telluride. But there you go. With those seats down, you do have a pretty good amount of storage space. But with them up, you can probably see that line. You have maybe a foot of cargo space with those seats up, which is just not helpful. Okay, that's gonna wrap things up for the exterior tour. Let's take this thing out and go for a drive and give you my final thoughts. Okay, so let's take this thing out and give you some final thoughts on my week with the Lexus LX 600. And by the way, if you're interested, my written reviews go live as soon as I'm able to get them published on KSL.com, on the KSL Cars Resources page, and also on the front page as soon as there's a spot available. So if you're curious about reading my reviews, that's primarily the content I make is written stuff. You can find it on KSL.com. If you just search Jason Bell KSL, you'll find a number of things that I've written. Most of the car content on that page is written by myself or even my wife and a good friend of ours who you probably maybe have heard of, Tyson Hughes. So anyway, some thoughts on the Lexus LX. Now, this is a $110,000 SUV. And I'll just cut right to the chase. The selling point here is the powertrain. And it is glorious. I'm driving with the lights on in here so you can get some better light. I just ran out of time tonight, so it's kind of poor lighting, so forgive me. But I will say, guys, this powertrain is so good. Now, time will be the test if this proves to be as reliable as Toyota's previous offerings. I mean, you talk about the V8 that was in the Land Cruiser and the Sequoia of years past, and they're incredible. They're famous and for going, you know, literally over 1 million miles. But this new powertrain, its transmission, and this twin turbo V6 is so good. Sheesh, there's so much power there. It's so eager and so responsive. This is one of the most eager engines I've ever driven. And it's so just a joy to just be in. I fell in love with it in the new Tundra, and I can absolutely vouch for it here in the new LX. Now, what's interesting in that this is like the top of the top is that this is not the hybrid, the iForce Max twin turbo V6 that's available in something like the Tundra. This is just their standard one, which is still so good. Like, if you're hesitant, you just need to go and drive it. A lot of people on my Tundra video commented on, you know, how they were so disappointed in the Tundra for so many reasons, and I know, you know, it doesn't have tow hooks, doesn't have some of that stuff, but like, you need to go drive it. Like, it's a fantastic truck. I really like it. That's something I'd legitimately like to pick up one of these days, is the TRD Pro Tundra. Wow. But this thing is always just ready to go. There's always power there. It's just, the torque is just there. It's eager, it's responsive. The transmission shifts like ZF quality, just boom, boom, boom. It's fast. Like, Toyota really did a great job with this new powertrain, and I adore it. Now, something with the powertrain that's been interesting is the gas mileage has not been as good as I experienced in the Tundra. There were some days when I was getting almost 24 miles to the gallon on my commute home with the Tundra. This I've been getting on the high end, 18 or 19, which is significantly below the EPA estimates. So definitely kind of like a disappointment there, especially considering, I mean, the V8 and the last LX and the Tundra and Sequoia and stuff got worse. But if this was done in the name of efficiency, it's not all that more efficient, at least here in the LX, which is kind of a surprise. So I will say, if you're looking for like a really luxurious SUV, the LX should be considered primarily because of its powertrain. That is absolutely its selling point. Now, I'll come back to why that's maybe a problem in just a minute, but let me just give you a couple other impressions on my week with this thing and why it may be worth your 110 grand or why it maybe not be. So $110,000 is a lot of money. You can get a fully loaded Grand Wagoneer Series 3, which is like primo luxury. You can get an Escalade, a Navigator, you know, Range Rovers. Those Range Rover is going to be more, but that's the kind of like feel this is in. And all of those feel like super luxurious. This definitely feels luxurious, but I'm not sure if it feels $110,000 luxurious. It's been kind of surprising. It's very nice, don't get me wrong, but I don't know that it feels totally special to the tune of 110 grand. And I'll get to, again, more on that in just a second. If this was like 90 grand or even like 80 or 85, I'd be like, that's really cool. That's like worth considering. I'm interested in that. But at 110, it gets kind of, it's more of a hard sell. The front seats are not that roomy. They're comfortable, but for me, as a 5'9", 180-pound person, used to be 165 pounds, but in the last 10 years, you know, put on a little extra weight. But as a 5'9", just male, 180 pounds, I think that these seats are good. At the same time, the knee room, my knees rest on the sides, like on the door and on the center console. And not in a way that's particularly good. I would expect it to be more just open, more like throne-like for this kind of money and for how big this SUV is. So that's not here. The rear seat, the middle row, as I just showed you, is surprisingly not roomy either. This is really a 4-seater. And even at that, it's not like, wow, I just can lounge in here and have tons of room. The third row is especially difficult to make a case for. Those seats are literally best kept for like emergencies only, especially for like small children. Anybody else for any prolonged period of time is going to find it a terrible place to be back there. So it's really a 4-seater. You can have those jump seats in a pinch if you absolutely need to. But you're left with kind of a four-seater that's a large SUV that just doesn't have that much room inside, which is kind of surprising. I know the last LX, I know this is still based on, you know, there's that and like the Land Cruiser, and I know that wasn't really particularly roomy either, and that's been carried on here. A couple other things that I don't really care that much about, but someone spending 110 grand might, like, there's no massaging seats here, which is like really surprising. And it's just even a half analog, half digital display, which is something you get in like a $28,000 Civic, right? Personally, I don't mind analog gauges, but again, if I'm spending 110 grand, then I might be kind of disappointed. So here's the main concern with the Lexus LX, and it has to do with its in-house rivalries. Toyota's Sequoia, and I would even say the Tundra, but let's even just stick with the Sequoia. I haven't been in a Sequoia yet, but from what I've read and the research I've done and the reviews I've watched, it seems that the new Sequoia is more spacious than this. And if you get the new Sequoia in its capstone trim, it's pretty much just as luxurious, if not more so, than this. And it costs considerably less, like closer to around $80,000, 80, maybe 85. But even still, we're talking $20 to $30,000 price difference from the Sequoia to this. And it's going to have more space, almost, if not just as much or more luxury, and a third row that's more usable. And some might even think that it looks a little bit better because you don't have the huge grille. However, if you love the styling, you do want the extra, you know, nice Lexus luxury touches and the especially quiet, subdued ride and the amazingly comfortable suspension, which this is great. We took this on a long drive, like a 4-hour drive up through canyon roads to see the fall colors here in Utah. I put my kids in the back and I put my mother-in-law, my father-in-law here in the second row. And we all had a great time and it was super comfortable for that kind of thing. So if you like the styling, if you like the Lexus, you know, little extra touches of the suspension, of the ride quality, and, you know, the little, you know, things, the extra sound deadening and stuff like that, I think you're going to be pretty happy. However, if you don't care that much about those things, you should go look at the new Sequoia. And if you don't need a third row, like, go look at the Capstone Tundra. You're going to get even a more powerful engine if you want the iForce Max hybrid. And you're getting a ton of luxury as well. And those are expensive vehicles. I do think that even those are probably a little overpriced, considering where the Tundra prices and Sequoia prices used to be. I think that those are, I think Toyota's stretching there a little bit, but I think that they're really good. I haven't been to the Sequoia, but I've been in the Tundra, and I love that truck. I think they did such a good job with it. It feels so light on its feet. It handles so well. The powertrain's great. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Lexus LX. It's kind of all over the place, but the short of it is the powertrain's amazing. But you can also find this powertrain in Toyota's other offerings. So it really comes down to if you just like the styling. If you like the styling, you're okay with basically just a 4-seater. You don't need all that extra stuff. You like the Lexus luxury badge. You like the big grille. You like the red, you know, black leather interior. This is the F Sport. They have other trims, obviously. But if you're okay with all of that, then I would say, you know, go for it. But if not, you might want to go and check out the Sequoia. You can go check out, you know, the Escalade, the Grand Wagoneer, Navigator. You know, that whole segment is pretty competitive and very competitive, right? And so that's kind of where this falls there. But for what it is, I think that Lexus has done a pretty fantastic job at updating like an icon. The Lexus LX is legendary, as is the Land Cruiser. But for us who, you know, maybe want to save a couple bucks while still getting a lot of luxury and a great powertrain, the Sequoia, let's go check it out. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I hope this helps. And, you know, I know it's not the most detailed as far as technology and specs go, but that's not really my point with these reviews. I want to give you more of what it's like to live with this thing, what it's like to drive, daily drive, and is it worth your $110,000? So from that perspective, these are my thoughts. Guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Have a great evening. I'll talk to you later.